wait to see this man today. I've never wanted a Republican to have won, except you, more than you.
Yeah. Well.
Let me introduce you. Governor John Kasich was the only grown-up on the dais, in my opinion, during the Republican primary. So as the governor heads towards a shutdown, let's hope his plan to turn it around is in this book. It's called Two Paths, America Divided or United. Question. Please welcome Ohio Governor John Kasich.
Thank you, Joy. Joy said back there, she said, well, you know, I really wish you had won. I said, well, you wouldn't have as good a ratings that I won. You know, so you're having a ball. And by the way, I thought when I was backstage, I said, I'm not going to talk about politics. Then I saw the last segment. Let's talk about politics.
Yes. You see my discomfort.
No, we would not put you on the spot about orgasms.
Listen, my wife might be watching.
That's right.
That's right.
Listen, I'm going to be at 30,000 feet today.
Good. All right,
so pivot. Show us how the pivot is done.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about Trump. He's coming up on his 100th day very shortly. You did not endorse him.
Nope.
I remember that as a very good day for me. He asked you to, I believe, but you didn't do it. Am I correct? Right. And also, you never went to the Republican convention.
Yeah, that made a lot of people happy in my party.
Did not. Yeah. Not.
Look, I believe that the country needs to come together, okay? And I believe people have problems, then let's go and solve them. Let's not give them, let's not, you know, say to them, well, somebody else took what you had, therefore. So is positive populism negative populism? I'm a positive populist. The president has been a negative populist.
He's a negative populist.
So,
is there anything you like about what he's done? Anything?
Look, I went to Munich with John McCain on the defense conference, and I do believe the action in Syria sent a message that America's not, like, out to lunch and doesn't care. I thought that was important. What I don't like is this whole knock and talk policy, where you're knocking on a door, and if they found out you snuck into a country, even if you didn't, you know, violate a law, we're going to ship you back out. I mean, we got enough broken families than to have any more. So, look, it's been all of my career. When George Bush, the senior, was president, I wrote a budget against his. So in my job, I try to look at, you know, what's the facts, what's the situation, and then call it like I see it. That's what I do. This book is. A lot of people say, well, he wrote this book because he wants to run for office or whatever. No, I wrote this book because, folks, we can't live fighting even inside of our own families. We got to figure out how to listen to other people and how to get along and stop tearing each other apart.
Yeah.
And the greatest things, Rupi, I've been talking about this. One of the great things that happened to me was Bernice King invited me down to Atlanta for the Martin Luther King Day. And I was on this panel, and somebody said, what about Trump? And I said, well, wait a minute. What about your neighbor? And when you think about Martin Luther King, Dr. King, the politicians wouldn't even meet with him. So what did he have to do? He united all of us against the moral outrage of racism, and he drove the message to the top.
Yeah, grassroots.
Trevor Noah said something to me yesterday. He said, because I was talking about the United Airlines. He said, you know what's happened with United is all of us have sent a message to the big cheeses at United. We're not putting up with that nonsense on an airplane, never. So we need to send a message up.
Well, it's always been grassroots.
Yeah.
It's all grassroots. So what's your biggest complaint? Is it Republicans sort of being complicit in an agenda that might not be great for the country? Is it that Democrats don't seem to have a knowledge of what's going on?
But you know what bothers me? Everybody's in a silo. We consume that we agree with, and if we don't agree with something, we shut it out. If they write to us on Facebook, we unfriend people. We're not listening to one another. We're all connected, Joy. We all have.
I really think that if you had won, we would have been much more attentive to what you were saying and not be so against everything that this guy's trying to do. Because to me, he's unraveling everything that we accomplished in the last 8 years.
Well, the biggest, this is not, but you got to remember that this problem has been going on for decades now. The fighting, the dysfunction. And in our own, but we have to start where we live. So what do I say? I say, okay, how do we have common humanity? We ought to be mentoring kids. We ought to be doing it whether we're Republicans and Democrats. We ought to be fighting the drug scourge. This is a horrible thing. The drug overdoses, we ought to be doing it together and warning kids about the dangers of drugs. We ought to be helping veterans when they come back to get a job where we live. Yeah. We ought to be taking care of one another.
I think that people, but I think people do those things.
Not enough.
We're
because,
talking about his policies.
You know why? Because we're all going into these silos, Joy, and we did it before. So somebody was talking about, you know, I was with Republicans. They go, well, look at how badly they're treating Trump. I said, well, look at Republicans. They didn't even. There was an argument about whether Barack Obama was born in America.
That's right.
We cannot do well if we
started by this president.
Perpetrated by Donald Trump.
Well, the original sin.
Speaking of this person we don't mention enough, you recently had a face-to-face with Trump.
I did.
You guys didn't exactly have a warm relationship. Was this meeting a little
I didn't endorse him, you know. No, he was very, very nice. I was there for like a long time. And I told him some of the things that I observed when I was in Europe with McCain, and I told him some things I felt about the health care bill, which I feel very strongly about, because we cannot pull the rug from under people who are mentally ill or drug addicted or they're chronically, okay? Now, but I told him another thing. Look, when I became the governor, I had a congressional attitude in the governor's office. And one day my wife came to me and she said, you know, John, you're the governor of Ohio. You're the father of Ohio. Why don't you act like it? And I told the president that, because when you get in a position of authority, I represent 11.5 million people, you have to make sure that everybody feels included. And everybody feels as though they have an opportunity. And look, this guy's been in about not even 100 days. So, you know, I can look at the good things, some of the good things he does, and I can criticize the bad, but I want to give him a chance because I'm going to root for the pilot on the airplane I'm on. I got to root for the President of the United States regardless of whatever party he or she is a member of.
But some of the things that he does needs resistance rather than rooting for him.
Okay, we can resist.
Or
but we don't.
accountable.
But we don't have.
But
we don't have to hate.
But I need to ask you, Governor.
No, but that's what's happened.
It's not about hate.
Let me tell you. Do you realize there was a woman in the New York Times that was writing that she moved her wedding out of the United States to Italy because she didn't want her family getting into a fist fight at the wedding reception. People are not getting along in our families, and you know. Here's what happened. People gave up bowling and they took up politics. You know what I think they ought to do? Go back to bowling. Go back to bowling.
You know what? It would be wonderful. You know, it would really be wonderful if people could. But here's the problem. When you have someone who scares people for a living, who got here by saying, hey, they're the problem. You know, the last time we saw that was happening in Germany. When you start pointing at people and scaring children and saying, you know, you're not going to have this and this is these, that's why people are freaking out.
And we're coming out.
We need to find a way to come into balance.
Well, look, people, look at these marches, the March for Science, the Women's March. The good thing is there's greater activism.
Yes.
But I think you've got to say, look, I'm not here to be a PR man for anybody.
No.
But look, he's cut these tweets. You don't see what they were. Maybe he is starting to get his sea legs on this thing. Well, look, Whoopi, I'm just telling you.
I love you for your optimism.
Well, you know, what am I supposed to do? Give up?
No, you can't give
look,
up.
I can fight against somebody else's views, but I don't have to become, I don't have to give in.
No.
You remember when, the funniest thing, I never thought I'd ever say this, it just popped in my head. Nixon said, when he was being impeached, he said, they may hate me, but I'm not going to hate them because then they win.
That's right.
And so I just kind of think that here's another thing.
Wait, John, we
gotta
can't.
go. We can't. We're out of time.
We're out of time?
Yeah.
What about this book?
I know.
Come
Let's
on.
promote the book.
Read the
Our
book.
thanks to Governor John Kasich. Two Paths, America Divided or United, is in store